My child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. Something has shifted behind the scenes, something your eyes could not witness and your heart could not explain, yet heaven has seen every detail. Do not scroll away. There is a conversation taking place that carries your name, a conversation you were never expected to discover, and the person asking the questions is someone your soulmate trusted to protect them from pain. Their lawyer learned something about you, something so unexpected that the entire direction of the situation began to change. But the truth is not what fear has been whispering to you. Stay with this message, because the final detail of what was discovered will reveal why silence has surrounded this connection and why your soulmate has been acting as though they are fighting a battle they cannot describe. You have felt the distance. You have noticed the strange pauses, the unanswered questions, the moments when your soulmate seemed ready to speak and then suddenly withdrew. You wondered whether their feelings had disappeared, whether someone else had entered the story, or whether you had misunderstood the bond entirely. Yet what you could not see was the pressure building around them. There were decisions being discussed, papers being reviewed, possibilities being considered, and your soulmate believed they had to handle everything alone. They thought silence would protect you. They thought keeping you outside the situation would prevent your heart from becoming burdened. But silence did not bring peace. It created confusion, and confusion made you question what was once clear. The lawyer entered the story believing this was an ordinary matter. They were trained to examine facts, remove emotion, and look for risks hidden beneath appearances. They had heard your name before, but only in fragments. Sometimes your soulmate spoke of you with tenderness, and sometimes they avoided mentioning you altogether. That contradiction caught the lawyer's attention. Why would someone speak of a person as though they were deeply important, then suddenly become guarded whenever the conversation moved toward the future? Why would your soulmate keep returning to your name even when the discussion had nothing to do with you? The lawyer began to sense that you were not a distraction from the situation. You were at the center of it. At first, your soulmate resisted the questions. They changed the subject. They insisted that your involvement was complicated. They said the timing was wrong. They tried to make their feelings sound smaller than they truly were. But the lawyer had spent years listening to people hide the truth behind careful words, and they recognized what was happening. Your soulmate was not trying to erase you. They were trying to protect something they feared losing. Every time your name was mentioned, their posture changed. Their voice softened, then tightened. Their eyes revealed what their mouth refused to confess. And in that moment, the lawyer understood that this was no ordinary attachment. Something extraordinary was concealed beneath the legal language and practical decisions. Your soulmate's choices were not being guided by indifference. They were being guided by fear, loyalty, guilt, and a love they had not learned how to carry. They were afraid that bringing you closer would expose you to a conflict you did not deserve. They were afraid that if you saw the full situation, you might turn away. They were afraid that the truth about their responsibilities would make them appear weak. Yet beneath every fear was one unspoken confession: they still cared more deeply than they had admitted. The lawyer began reviewing what had been presented. Dates, messages, written statements, old agreements, and details that seemed unrelated were placed beside one another. Slowly, a pattern formed. Your soulmate had repeatedly made choices that protected your name. When others attempted to blame you, your soulmate corrected them. When someone suggested that you were the cause of their uncertainty, your soulmate refused to accept it. When pressure was placed upon them to move forward without considering you, they delayed the decision. They never told you this. They never asked to be praised. They simply kept protecting you in rooms where you were not present. My child, this is why your spirit has felt restless. Part of you sensed that the story being shown on the surface was incomplete. You could feel the hidden movement, but because no one explained it, you began filling the silence with your deepest fears. You wondered whether you had been forgotten. You questioned whether your prayers had gone unheard. You tried to convince yourself to stop caring, yet something within you kept saying, "Wait. There is more." That inner knowing was not foolishness. It was the awareness that the visible ending had not matched the invisible truth. Do not skip what comes next, because this is where the lawyer's discovery became personal. Among the information they reviewed was a message connected to you. It was not a dramatic confession, nor was it something you had written for attention. It was a simple expression of concern, kindness, or patience that you may have forgotten. Yet when the lawyer read it, they stopped. The tone of your words did not match the description others had given of you. You had been portrayed as someone demanding, disruptive, or difficult to understand, but your message revealed restraint. It revealed compassion. It revealed someone who had been hurt yet had chosen not to injure others in return. The lawyer read the message again. Then they asked your soulmate a question they were not prepared to answer. Why are you trying so hard to distance yourself from someone who appears to be protecting your heart? The room became quiet. Your soulmate looked away, because that question touched the truth they had spent so long avoiding. They were not avoiding you because you lacked value. They were avoiding you because your presence made it impossible for them to continue pretending that the life being arranged around them was enough. There are moments when truth does not arrive like thunder. It arrives through one sentence that removes every hiding place. That question became such a moment. Your soulmate had prepared explanations for everything except the possibility that someone would recognize your sincerity. They expected the lawyer to warn them about you. They expected to be told that emotions were dangerous, that they should move forward without looking back, that your connection was too complicated to matter. Instead, the lawyer saw what others had missed. You were not the source of chaos. You were the person your soulmate associated with honesty. This revelation unsettled them. Your soulmate began remembering moments they had buried. The time you remained patient when you could have demanded answers. The time you sensed their pain but did not embarrass them by exposing it. The time you gave space even though your own heart was aching. They remembered your silence differently. What they once interpreted as distance, they now saw as dignity. What they once feared was rejection, they began to understand as self-protection. And for the first time, they wondered whether their own avoidance had wounded the one person who had tried not to wound them. Heaven has watched you carry that pain without knowing the truth. You have replayed conversations and searched for the moment everything changed. You blamed your words. You questioned your worth. You wondered whether being more patient, more beautiful, more successful, or more expressive would have created a different outcome. But hear this clearly, you were never required to become someone else to be worthy of honest love. The confusion did not begin because you lacked something. It began because your soulmate did not know how to face what your presence awakened within them. Your energy called them toward truth, and truth demanded change. It asked them to examine promises made from fear. It asked them to confront obligations they had accepted without considering their own heart. It asked them to admit that appearances and genuine peace were not the same thing. Loving you, even silently, made them aware of everything false around them. That awareness frightened them. They believed avoiding you would quiet the truth, but it only made the truth louder. The lawyer continued asking questions, not about romance, but about motive. Why had your soulmate delayed certain decisions? Why had they refused to sign something when everyone expected them to? Why had they asked for additional time after hearing your name? Why did they keep a record of a conversation with you? Why had they protected that record rather than deleting it? Each answer revealed another layer. Your soulmate had been making room for the possibility of you, even while acting as though they had accepted a future without you. They did not call it hope. They called it caution. They did not call it love. They called it unfinished business. They did not admit they were waiting. They said they needed clarity. But words cannot hide the direction of the heart forever. The lawyer could see that every delay pointed toward one unresolved truth: your soulmate had not made peace with losing you. Something else was discovered, and this detail changed the emotional weight of the entire conversation. The lawyer found that your soulmate had rejected a proposal, condition, or agreement that would have made their life easier because accepting it could have permanently closed the door to you. They never told you. From where you stood, it looked as though they had chosen comfort over connection. In reality, they had quietly refused something because a part of them still believed your story was not finished. Yet this does not mean they were brave. Their silence still hurt you. Their indecision still created consequences. Heaven does not ask you to call confusion love or to accept endless uncertainty. This message is not telling you to chase someone who refuses to speak. It is revealing that the silence was more complicated than rejection. The truth gives understanding, but understanding does not require you to abandon your boundaries. Your heart deserves clarity, and what is hidden cannot remain hidden forever. The lawyer recognized this as well. They told your soulmate that protecting you through silence was no longer protection. It was a decision being made on your behalf without your consent. They explained that withholding truth might prevent one difficult conversation, but it could create a lifetime of regret. Your soulmate listened without interrupting. Their face changed. The defenses they had carried began to weaken. For the first time, someone outside the connection spoke the words they had been afraid to admit. You are not staying away because you do not care. You are staying away because you care enough to be afraid. That sentence followed them after the meeting ended. They heard it while walking through the hallway. They heard it while sitting alone. They heard it when they reached for their phone and stopped. Their mind returned to you. Not to an idealized memory, but to the real you, the person who had flaws, questions, fears, and yet still offered something honest. They remembered the way your presence made them feel seen. They remembered how difficult it was to lie to themselves after speaking with you. They remembered the peace they felt before fear convinced them to retreat. My child, you may have noticed a sudden shift within yourself recently. Perhaps you woke with their name in your thoughts. Perhaps an old memory returned without warning. Perhaps you felt calm after weeks of emotional heaviness. These moments do not guarantee a specific outcome, but they often appear when your heart is ready to release the burden of false conclusions. You are being invited to stop defining yourself by someone else's silence. Whether they come forward or remain hidden, your worth is not waiting for their decision. But there is movement. Your soulmate is no longer able to pretend that the situation can continue unchanged. The lawyer's questions opened a door they had kept locked. Once truth enters a room, every illusion becomes harder to maintain. They began to examine who had influenced their choices. They began to notice how often fear had been disguised as responsibility. They began to question whether they had been honoring their obligations or simply avoiding discomfort. Then the lawyer revealed something your soulmate did not know. Someone had supplied information about you that was incomplete. A statement had been repeated without context. Your motives had been interpreted by a person who did not understand your heart. That distorted version of you had influenced the situation more than anyone realized. Your soulmate had not believed all of it, but the uncertainty had been enough to make them cautious. Now the lawyer had found evidence that contradicted the story. The evidence was not dramatic. It was powerful because it was consistent. Your actions across time did not match the accusations. You had opportunities to interfere, but you did not. You had reasons to expose private details, but you remained quiet. You could have used your soulmate's vulnerability against them, yet you protected what they shared. The lawyer saw a pattern of restraint that could not be dismissed as performance. Your character was visible in the moments when no reward was offered. Your soulmate felt ashamed. Not because the lawyer embarrassed them, but because they realized how much pain their doubt may have caused you. They had allowed another person's interpretation to become louder than their own experience. They had remembered every good thing you did, yet they still permitted fear to question your intentions. That realization became difficult to carry. They began wondering whether you would still listen if they finally explained. They wondered whether your silence meant you had moved on. They wondered whether the door they kept trying to protect had already closed because they waited too long. Stay till the end, because the next detail is where everything became unexpected. The lawyer did not simply advise your soulmate to reconsider the situation. They asked whether your soulmate wanted to place your name into the official conversation, not as a problem, not as a risk, but as someone whose existence affected the decision being made. Your soulmate froze. Until that moment, you had existed only in the emotional shadows of the matter. Speaking your name openly would mean admitting that you mattered. It would mean they could no longer hide behind vague explanations. The lawyer waited. Your soulmate looked down at the documents before them, then toward the phone resting beside their hand. The room became so quiet that every breath seemed amplified. They were being given a chance to tell the truth, but truth would change everything. It could alter plans. It could disappoint people. It could expose feelings they had kept hidden. It could also become the first honest step they had taken in a very long time. For several seconds, they said nothing. Then they asked the lawyer what would happen if they admitted that their heart was still connected to you. The lawyer's response was calm: "Then we stop building a future around a lie." Those words shook something loose within them. Your soulmate realized they had been treating their love for you like an inconvenience that needed to be managed rather than a truth that deserved to be understood. They had spent so long trying to control the outcome that they had forgotten honesty was also a choice. The lawyer did not promise that everything would become easy. They did not say there would be no consequences. They simply made one thing clear. Continuing in silence would also have consequences, and those consequences might be irreversible. Your soulmate reached for their phone. Their fingers hovered over your name. They had imagined this moment many times, but now it felt different. This was not a lonely impulse in the middle of the night. This was a decision made after the truth had been examined and the false story had begun to collapse. They wanted to tell you what had happened. They wanted to explain why the distance had grown. They wanted to admit that fear, not lack of feeling, had kept them away. But before they could contact you, another message appeared on the screen. It came from the person who had first given the lawyer information about you. Your soulmate opened it, expecting another warning, another attempt to create doubt, another reason to remain silent. Instead, the message contained a confession. The person admitted that they had hidden part of the truth. They revealed that they knew your soulmate still cared for you, and they had deliberately presented your actions in the worst possible way because they feared what would happen if the two of you spoke honestly. Your soulmate's hands began to tremble. The lawyer watched their expression change and asked what the message said. For the first time, your soulmate did not protect the person who had manipulated the story. They handed over the phone. The lawyer read the confession slowly. Then they looked at your soulmate with a seriousness that made the room feel suddenly different. What had appeared to be an emotional misunderstanding was now something much larger. The confession revealed that a decision involving your future had been influenced by someone who knew the truth and chose to hide it. Your soulmate whispered your name. Not with uncertainty. Not with fear. With the realization that they may have been pushed away from you by someone they trusted. The lawyer placed the phone beside the documents and said there was one more thing they needed to show them, something they had discovered earlier but had not yet revealed. It was connected to a date your soulmate remembered clearly, the day they first believed you had turned against them. Your soulmate leaned forward. The lawyer opened a file, removed a single page, and placed it on the table. At the top was your name. Beneath it was evidence that proved you had not betrayed them that day. But before your soulmate could finish reading, the lawyer pointed to the final line on the page and said, "This is the part you were never supposed to see."